In 2016, little by little, you could feel that people wanted something new. They got tired of this. They were still positive, but they were looking for some new ideas, new senses.
Hello and welcome to Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Jabot. And this time we're joined by a political consultant and former speechwriter for Vladimir Putin. Abbas Gallyamov wrote for Putin when he was president and prime minister in total 3 years, but he went into self-imposed exile when authorities began to clamp down on free speech and has now been added to the Kremlin's wanted list. Abbas, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time. You first started working for President Putin as a speechwriter when he was president in the year 2000. How did that job come about?
Well, it was interesting and hopeful times. At that time, very little was telling about what Putin might become. He sounded quite democratic. He sounded, he behaved like he seemed to be really like in favor of modernization of Russia, about continuing the reforms. Yes, he actually started the process of consolidation of the power, but it was, and in a certain moment, it quickly turned into fight with freedom of speech and some other democratic principles. But in general, it seemed like those were the excesses, so to say, not the something like not the mainstream. The mainstream was seemed to be correct. So. In general, the Russian political system at that moment, it really needed some degree of consolidation because it really became ungovernable. Aside from being democratic, political system, administrative system should be governable. If there is a presidential decree or if there is a law, it should work. And back in the 90s, it was not working. So it was so obvious to the society that it was no good. That the initial Putin's steps towards consolidation of power, they were widely welcomed by a lot of people, including liberals. So he was pro-Western. I remember that when September the 11th, the events happened, how quickly he reacted. I was working in his team at that moment. And I remember his demand for some very warm speech of condolences, and he was like his support of democracy, democratic principles, his total unacceptability of like terrorism as political method. So he was absolutely sincere at that moment. He seemed to be. So those were the times full of change, full of hope, sorry, if you ask me about it. Totally different from what we have now.
The second time that you went to work as a speechwriter for Putin, he was prime minister. That was between 2008 and 2010. Did you notice any difference in him?
He became more professional, so to say. He became more self-confident, so he could afford himself more than before. So previously he was listening to other people more and speaking less. Now it was different. Now he was speaking more, although I wouldn't say that he behaved like a dictator. No, by no means. He was still very cautious when he was conducting his meetings. He was very cautious not to, if he wanted to hear the opinion of some person whom he considered professional in some sphere, he was very cautious not to impose his own personal opinion onto this person. You understand? He clearly understood the problem that if he speaks out his mind first, then this person would not feel free to express himself. So he was taking care of this. So I would say that he behaved like a very very professional, very, rational manager, corporate manager who knew how to give orders, how to receive reports, how to uh, share responsibilities, how to collect opinions. Like I say that nothing at this moment could. He was very rational. This is the main feeling. He was never like you could never see him being irritated or emotional or losing temper. He was always in good self-control of himself. So you could never imagine at that moment that he would become this self-destructing person who would be destroying the country, his own country, let alone Ukraine. It's about Russia. He's destroying Russia now. He's destroying his own political future. He's destroying his own prospects. So now he seems like absolutely erratic, absolutely irrational. At that time, it was totally different. I think little by little he lost control of himself in terms of like this big power corrupted him mentally. He's totally unable to withstand, to tolerate opposition, objections, something which he was capable of doing previously.
I'll ask you a little bit more about that later on. But when you were writing speeches for him, was there a kind of leader that you were trying to portray at the time? Did you have a narrative to follow?
No, just on the we knew the way he liked to speak. We knew the way we were always present during meetings, and we were thoroughly watching how he was behaving. So we were trying to imagine what would look best in his mouth, so to say, what would sound the most impressive. So we definitely knew that he would never admit if we write something where he's, like Barack Obama, or like Zelensky. They are this type of political leaders who are not afraid to show that they don't know something, that they are like thinking about something and they are not sure about it, and maybe this, maybe that. They're not afraid to display it. Putin is never like this. You could never write anything like this. He's always in control of the situation. He always knows exactly what to do. He always knows exactly what to say, where to lead his country. Or even if he does not, he should look like he does. So this was something like this gut feelings which we all had, and if we were not those people who couldn't write it, they were not just working in the team, and those people who didn't feel it. It was like this.
You say that you kind of you knew the kind of way he liked to speak. Can you give us some examples of the kinds of things you would write for him?
It was his first victory day as a president in 2000, and it was no, sorry, it was 2001, so it was his second victory day, and there was a big speech on this, military parade on the Red Square, and the phrase which I coined, which I'm ashamed of now, was, and he pronounced it, was, not every nation has a victory of this scale. Такая победа есть не у каждого народа. It was like a clear break from the previous tradition of Yeltsin, where we were trying to portray, Russia was trying to portray itself not separate from others, but as part of it was always we and the world won Hitler. And what I wrote, what he spoke was that it's us. It's us. It's our victory. We're not going to share it with all the others. So it was like the beginning of his nationalism. I'm ashamed of this thing, and like I completely forgot about it. If you hadn't asked me, I wouldn't have recalled it. But now, since you asked me, I'm telling you honestly. This was the thing, the kind of thing which he wanted, which he demanded. Although, of course, he didn't. He was very cautious at the beginning. He was moving towards this kind of nationalism he's displaying now, little by little, step by step. And actually, I don't think that it was predetermined. Actually, the real source of conflict between. Sorry, you didn't ask me about this, but this is a natural course of this conversation, so I'll try to tell, and if not, break, just stop me. Uh, I was thinking a lot what was the real stumbling block which made him enemy of the West, because I remember at the beginning he was not like, he didn't feel like he was the enemy. Like I told, he was absolutely sincere with his offer of help to America after September the 11th. He was I think it was this criticism. He for sure he didn't dream about reestablishing Soviet Union. Like now they're telling that was his long-term dream. No, definitely no. What made him go onto this path, which ultimately led him to this conflict with the West, which he's trying to justify now by trying to restore the Soviet Union, which is just means of justification. But initially, it was this criticism of his non-democratic practices. He felt that, like, that he's being insulted. Hey, man, I respect. I'm not getting meddling with your internal affairs. Like, I respect. In his opinion, if you are the boss, you have the full right of doing whatever you want in your own realm, and it's none of the business of other leaders to intervene into this. So I respect what you are doing there. I'm not meddling with your affairs in America or in England, and so you please don't meddle with me. And when you're criticizing my conduct of my attitude towards freedom of speech or with other democracies or stealing elections and things like this, well, then you are becoming my enemy. So had West not criticized him, I understand that it was not possible, of course. But theoretically speaking, had West not started criticizing him for all these things, had it closed its eyes on him being turning autocratic little by little, there would have been no conflict actually. He wouldn't have been trying to create this Russian world, what they're calling it now. He wouldn't go beyond Russian border, most probably. At least initially it was visible. He didn't think about it at all. He didn't dream about it. He's too much. He's not expansionist in general. I know what I'm telling is counterintuitive. That now he seems to be like an aggressor, but originally he was not expansionist. He cared more about how to preserve what rightly belongs to him as he feels belongs to him. Not so much to obtain something which doesn't belong to him. So he's not like conqueror in this respect. And he was every time he was going abroad, like there were 3 wars he started. 2008 in Georgia, 2014 Crimea, and 22 the recent war with Ukraine. Every time he had really serious domestic problems which he was trying to solve, which led him abroad. In 2008, it was the presence of Medvedev, which all of a sudden turned out to be very keen on modernization. I understand now when you're listening to what Medvedev is telling, you completely forgot what he was beginning, how he was beginning. But in 2008, he was really trying to modernize the country. He was trying to limit this Putin's law enforcement. And I think that this really disturbed Putin and his law enforcement entourage, and they created this conflict with Georgia in order to limit Medvedev's ability to move towards West. He had to take this patriotic stance, this Russian nationalist stance, and he had to turn he had to speak out against America. America was criticizing him. So, and he was confined in this, realm of this nationalism. After this, his modernization efforts were already limited. He couldn't go so far. Something like this strong problem of delegitimization in 2014, which he solved at the expense of Crimea. And the same problem was happening with him since 2018. His ratings were going down, his legitimacy was suffering, and he was really going to face serious troubles by 2024 during his re-election. So he wanted to repeat this trick with Crimea. The real reason why he attacked Ukraine, in my opinion, was not so much that he wanted something from Ukraine. If there had been no Ukraine, he would have found somebody else. He just needed to change the agenda. The agenda was getting more and more domestic, which is working. I'm trying to cut the long story short. This domestic agenda was working against him because when the Russians look at the situation domestically, there are no reasons why Putin should be ruling them forever, and his ratings are down. When they are looking at politics through the lens of foreign policy and all this geopolitics, in this case, they feel like Putin is the only rescuer from the aggressive outside world, so to say. He's the only protector of the nation. So he needed some escalation with the outside world. Yes.
So, I mean, in short, I suppose what you're saying is his motivation is his self-preservation and being respected.
Yes, something like this. No, now definitely it led him so far away already that he cannot retreat without gaining something, bringing something to Russians, which they didn't have before the war. So now he has become already a conqueror. But originally his original motivation was this defensive.
So, just to go back to your story, what was the breaking point for you? When did you decide you had to get out of this job and ultimately you had to get out of the country? What happened?
Well, it was not something simple. Little by little, step by step, a lot of things were happening, and I was getting indications that the country was not going in the right direction. So after 2014, by that time I already quit. I went into one of the regions where I was offered a very high position, and I was working as a deputy governor of a big Russian territory. And in 2014, I quit it, and after Crimea, I decided that I would no longer want civil service work, so to say. I wouldn't be employed by the government. I became an independent political consultant after this. So in 2018, I had the final quarrel with Kremlin. Between 14 and 18, I was communicating more or less with them. They were not tightening the screws so strong, so it was relatively possible to be publicly critical and still not treated as an enemy. And then by 2018, by the end of this 2018, they became really nervous because the ratings were down, the protest moves were growing, so it was already visible. It was clear for those inside the Russian domestic politics team, so to say. It was already clear that they were heading towards trouble, and so they were becoming very nervous and more aggressive, demanding you to be loyal. Why did you say this? Why did you say that? And it was conflict after conflict. Hey guys, what's that? I'm not your employee. I'm independent. So and when they finally told me, okay, you are our enemy, although I wouldn't lie, nobody threatened me prison. They just told me you will lose all the contracts in the political sphere, and you will starve, and you'll have nothing to feed your family with, and you will crawl back to us on your knees. So that's how they spoke to me. So I told after this I decided to move my family to Israel and to be to feel safe. After this I felt my hands were more or less free and I could afford being very critical of them when I knew that my family was out of the reach. It was in Israel. And after this war started, I moved completely by myself and I'm no longer going there. And now I'm on the wanted list. They started criminal investigation against me. Yes.
Do you feel safe?
Well, yes, I'm Israeli citizen, and Israel has the reputation of the country which you don't want to meddle with. I'm not traveling to those countries which might be dangerous, of course. I'm refusing. They're inviting me sometimes. I'm refusing to travel to them. Countries like Georgia or others, which might be like considered as Putin's, where his FSB might feel, secure to operate. And in Israel, like I feel that I'm okay.
So you mentioned that it was the annexation of Crimea in 2014 was like the wake up call for you.
One of them. One of
When
them. No, no, no,
yeah, one
murder,
of them, one of
murder of
many.
Nemtsov. There were many of them.
And then when the actual invasion happened in 2022, were you surprised by that?
Of course, like I was, like all of us, I was shocked because I knew that it was counterproductive to him. I knew that it will ultimately lead to destruction of the system, to some kind of revolution. It just like this, the first World War led to the revolution of 1917. Putin set his country on this track. That's what shocked me the most. That's why till the last moment I didn't believe that he would do this, because it was so counterproductive. I think that till the last moment he was not planning to attack. Actually, what this military build-up he was making, it was designed to scare away Ukraine. All he wanted is for Ukraine to meet at least halfway his those demands which he made in December. Remember, he issued an ultimatum: no NATO, like status for the Russian language and some other things. And so he was hoping that Ukraine would stop at the final moment and tell, okay, we agree, at least to part of his demands, and he would come back to Russians as a victor, as a winner. But then he found out that Ukraine is just telling, get out of here, and not like complying. And what he already waving his knife, which he pulled out. He can't stop at this moment without losing his face. So he decided to repeat the Crimea trick without understanding what it would lead to.
I mean, public opinion, you say in Russia after the annexation of Crimea was euphoric about Putin and about
Till
Russia.
2018.
What was it like?
Sorry, it was euphoric 2014 till 2016. 2 years of absolute euphoria. In 2016, little by little, you could feel that people wanted something new. They got tired of this. They were still positive, but they were looking for some new ideas, new senses, new meanings, so to say, new slogans, and Putin was still offering the same. So people were like, this demand for novelty appeared, and in 2018, this demand for novelty, which was not fulfilled for 2 years at all, it started little by little transforming into negative feeling. And between 2018 and 2020-21, this negative feeling started dominating. Like you should understand that by something like 2020, Putin's electoral rating went beyond 50. It was something like 43, 44 when they stopped publishing it. So like this.
And how do you think the public within Russia think of him now?
Well, it's a very complicated thing because now people are so much scared. They are so much afraid of these repressions. They are really, literally severe. Not Stalin scales, but like definitely moving in these directions. Definitely nothing like this we had in the Soviet Union after 1953 when Stalin died. So it's worse than Brezhnev's years, Khrushchev's years, and all this Andropov's years, and so on, let alone Gorbachev. So people are afraid to speak out their minds. So they are all, I would say, taking into account this fear. They cannot afford hating him. Like I would say that something like 30% of the population in general, they are quite negative. 20% are not afraid to tell that they're negative, although they're afraid to come out into the streets. They were trying to do it 1 year and a half ago when the war started. But these protests were suppressed. All the prisons in Moscow were literally filled with people for several weeks. There were like no places in prisons, and so these protests were suppressed. So now something like 20% of people there, they're not afraid to speak up openly that they're against this. They're concentrated mostly in capitals, of course, in Moscow, not in like in remote areas. So the dominant feeling is displeasure, but not the majority are afraid to tell to point at the source of displeasure at Putin. But people really want, like the slogan of the day is normalization, back to normalization, back to normalcy, because people feel that what is happening is absolutely abnormal.
Just to go back to something you were saying earlier before, when you said that it was absolutely not inevitable that this was going to happen, that Putin has invaded Ukraine in the way that he has done, that he wasn't always, you say, on that trajectory. I was speaking to a former British defence attaché to Moscow last week, and he believed that the COVID pandemic was a defining moment for Putin. It was when he was isolated and manipulated by people close to him who put him on this war footing. Do you agree?
Well, in a way, yes. Definitely, this was one of the things which like really helped this transformation, his mental transformation to take place. This isolation, this, he's previously he was very sociable, so to say. He liked communicating with people. Little by little, he was becoming more and more bitter and, irritable, and so and pandemics in this respect, they legitimized this. Like, I can really sit alone without meeting people, communicating with people, and I feel comfortable. Just my close friends, my entourage. So it served as a kind of legitimization moment when something which he wanted, but before this felt like inappropriate, improper, like not possible for the president not to communicate with people. But he felt like it was not possible, although he wanted this. During COVID, it became legitimate. Yes, just a few friends, comfortable ones, and all the others, let them wait. Actually, this is the source of his trouble now. Look, speaking about this Prigozhin's mutiny, again, I'm sorry, you didn't ask me about that, but this is a good example. I'm still trying to answer your question. This Prigozhin's mutiny, which was a like serious trouble for Putin, it would never have happened if he had performed his duties, like communicating with people. Like Prigozhin revolted not because he was the enemy of the system. No, he was part and parcel of the system. He just wanted to change the way the system behaved, because the system was heading towards a military disaster, he felt, and he wanted to change it. But had Putin met him actually every day, discussed all the troubles without piling them up, and then inviting the Minister of Defense, discussing the issues and making decisions every day, like they would have not, all these problems wouldn't have gathered to such huge amount, like which later broke the system. And the only problem with Prigozhin was that he couldn't, get access to Putin. The system didn't change its wrong ways, and Prigozhin had to make this conflict public, and he was going step by step, and then this crisis happened.
You recently spoke to Times Radio after that failed mutiny by Yevgeny Prigozhin. You described Putin at the time as being hysterical. That, of course, was before the plane crash. Do you think that President Putin is in control now?
Look, definitely, after Prigozhin's death, he definitely strengthened his position in the Russian elites. Before this, for 2 months that passed since the mutiny and before Prigozhin was killed, these 2 months were like very bad for Putin, because all the elites, they could see that, wow, the rules have changed. Like, it's possible now to challenge Putin, to disobey him, and feel comfortable and feel okay. So probably these are the new rules of the game now. And Putin sent, by killing Prigozhin, Putin sent to them this powerful message: no, no, man, the rules are still the same. If you cause me trouble, you'll face serious problems. So now they got this message. They still understand. They understood that no matter how bad his positions in the front are, he is still in control of the situation. He is able to cope with any of them. So, from the point of view of elites, he strengthened his position. But from the point of view of public opinion, no, he weakened it, because like it really looked ugly to this Russian patriotic society, so to say, nationalistic society, which is the base of Putin's support. Well, he stabbed Prigozhin in the back. Prigozhin, after all, Prigozhin was not an enemy. He was this great Russian patriot. He was winning. The only detachment which was winning was Prigozhin's detachment. So he proved to be patriotic, and he was stabbed in the back by Putin for just speaking out openly and for disobeying Putin. So people like Putin didn't look nice in this situation, like aesthetically.
Yeah. And also, just before he was killed, though, Prigozhin made these comments, we think in Africa, where he said that he would make Russia great with the Wagner Group and its exploits in Africa. Do you think he also threatened Putin's position and his image of being the only person who could ensure Russia's future?
Well, he was not threatening Putin's image while he was loyal. The problem appeared when he stopped being loyal, when he disobeyed Putin, when he started challenging Putin's ministers. He was shaking the system. He was challenging the bureaucracy. Like bureaucracy, the governing bureaucracy was shocked when it saw that the criminal, actually, Prigozhin is a criminal. That this criminal is speaking on behalf of the president, as if he is like, as if so like there is no stability in it. Previously, they respected Putin for this stability which he guaranteed, and now all of a sudden, Putin became the source of instability instead of being the source of stability. And this was like he was. It seemed to them that Putin was acting through Prigozhin. So, like all this, Prigozhin turned into a revolutionary. The person who was to stabilize the system, he started destabilizing it. And in this situation, that was exactly what was the worst thing for Putin.
You've talked of an existential clash coming between the people of Russia and the government. What will trigger that, and what will it mean exactly?
Well, anything can trigger that. History of revolutions is telling that the tensions are building about one thing, and then the trigger happens somewhere in totally different sphere, because like the government in this sphere where the tensions are building, the government is strengthening its positions all the time, fortifying them. So most probably it will not explode here. Some like with what the attempted revolution of the previous year in Iran started. It started with this accident of a little girl being murdered by this morality police. Was she a well-known girl? No, totally no name. Or this Arab Spring. It started with this self-immolation of Mohammed Bouazizi. He was just selling fruit at the market at the local souk. The person who was absolutely not known to the majority of people. But these acts of injustice, they people perceive them as something like symbolic, as in something very typical. So it might be something like this, not necessarily elections, although the oncoming elections are of course the potential threat of destabilization, like number one, of course.
If you look at his speeches, he's trying to legitimize his leadership, the words he uses. And he's often talking about the motherland and bravery, stability, courage. Do you think Russian people actually buy that? And how safe do you think he is at the moment?
He was abusing these notions for so long. It's almost a quarter of a century, 23 years. So they stopped working. You can't exploit the same meanings for a quarter of a century without erosion. So he's no longer safe. There is no, like, very little left of his former popularity. and he can't find new meanings, new strategies actually, just repressions.
As I understand it, he really needs to be seen to win the war in Ukraine to survive. Can you just take us through what the consequences might be for him, depending on how long the fighting continues, and actually how the fighting ends? What brings this war to an end?
Well, just like the First World War ended not because of the military defeat of Russia. There were problems at the front, but still the Russian army could still go on fighting. But the revolution happened, and people who no longer wanted to fight, they overthrew the empire. So this is the chief, chief hope. Putin's loss of power, because if this revolution doesn't stop him, well, he might continue waging the war endlessly because he cannot afford stopping without winning, and he cannot win it as we see. Because for him to stop without winning, this is just equal to defeat. Because in just several months after the war is stopped, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling that Russians are going to revolt immediately after he stops the war without victory. No. But in several months, they would start asking questions. So why on earth we were making this war? Why we needed this?
So you said the revolution is coming. Do you firmly believe there is going to be a revolution then that throws Putin out?
Sensing that the revolution might be coming would convince him to step down like Yeltsin did, choose a successor and step down. And he might agree because he's now choosing between the fate of Yeltsin and Nikolai II, who was killed after the revolution. He doesn't have the option of staying permanently in his position now. So he's choosing between bad and even worse. And this is and so it's possible if they convince him and he steps down, and the successor is a smart one. There are a lot of people who are smart in his entourage, and he would start a little by little untightening the screws and set this conflict from the military onto the diplomatic tracks. And reforms instead of revolution are always possible, actually, almost till the last moment. So in our case, it's the same.
So who do you think might replace President Putin?
Well, there are a lot of people. Sobyanin, the mayor of Moscow, current Prime Minister Mishustin, Kozak, who is one of the closest people to Putin and who was responsible for Ukraine, and he was speaking against the war of Ukraine. That's why Putin is displeased with him, and now he has no responsibilities. He's occupying some formal position. So I feel that he might come out. The son of Patrushev. Patrushev is the secretary of Security Council, Secretary of Security Council, one of the chief hawks of the Russian politics. He has a son who is the Minister of Agriculture. This is probably the worst variant. This is the only hawk among those people who are who can become successors. All the others are relatively smart, and they will set the country on the right track.
Looking at your country from self-imposed exile, what does it look like to you now?
Well, it's a country which is struggling with the dictator. It's clear. It's no. The country which is suffering under the dictator and which is hoping to get rid of him. That's how it looks.
And when you look back at your career as a speechwriter for Putin, you said earlier that you were ashamed about what you wrote in 2001. Presumably, you do have regrets, do you?
That I worked for him? Well, I have to admit, yes. Knowing what he made now, probably it's impossible to say, no, I don't regret. Probably any person who worked for him has to regret it now.
Abbas Gallyamov, thank you so much for your time. It's been great speaking to you today. You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. My thanks to today's producer, Morgan Burdick, and to you for watching. If you'd like to support us, you can subscribe now, or you can listen to Times Radio for the latest news and in-depth analysis, or go to thetimes.co.uk. For now, though, bye-bye.